We have lots to talk about in today's video, including the latest trade rumors around the league, focusing today on teams like Buffalo, Vancouver, and Montreal. Plus, is the New York Rangers maybe looking at a coaching change? Is the seat of Peter Laviolette getting a little bit warm? We've already seen a major trade, followed that up with a few more losses. What is next for this club who are struggling to find its way? It seems like there's not much resonating with the players, and some speculation around if we could see a coaching change. Lots of information today as well from day 2 of the NHL Board of Governors meetings from Palm Beach, Florida. So we got lots to talk there when it comes to salary cap, expansion, CBA news, and more. Plus we have news from the NHL waiver wire, some injury updates, as well as another major NHL veteran player announcing his retirement. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today. Lots of news and rumors around the NHL. But first, we got a few quick items to touch on. First, the NHL waiver wire. We do have Boston putting Alec Regula on waivers here today. We'll find out tomorrow if he clears, which I suspect he most likely will, and then he can be reassigned to a minor league affiliate. Of course, as I mentioned, we have another retirement announcement coming today through the NHLPA, and that's longtime NHL defenseman Kevin Shattenkirk. Of course, the former first-round pick, played 14 years, 952 games, and of course won the Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning a few years back. So obviously a heck of a career. Got the ultimate goal of winning the Cup. I know he wanted to play this year. He was attempting to get a contract. Things never worked out for him. I do believe there was some levels of interest, but not to the point that he was willing to sign for. So obviously they kind of took him out of the game this year, but certainly I think he would have liked to have hit 1,000 games, which he wasn't too far off on, and get one more season in. But certainly Shattenkirk has nothing to be ashamed of. He had a heck of a career. Was a good offensive defenseman everywhere as he went. And like I said, ultimately won the Stanley Cup with the Lightning. So great career for Shattenkirk, and wish him the best in the future. I'm not sure what comes next. Wouldn't be completely shocked if we see a player like Shattenkirk do something on the media side, but we'll have to wait and see once we find out more for what's next for him. On to some injury updates. We got some major news for a couple of teams tonight. One, the Vancouver Canucks are getting Thatcher Demko back tonight. He's making his season debut. So certainly Demko is a huge part of what the Canucks are doing there. One of the best goalies in the NHL who's been out all season, battling a really odd knee-related type of injury. Obviously Kevin Lankinen has played extremely well, and he will continue to work with Demko as what could be one of the better tandems in the NHL. So we'll see. Obviously, the signing of Lankinen has proven to be extremely valuable so far. But obviously Demko, there's not too many guys who can match what Demko can do. But I suspect that when it comes to Demko, the one thing that they're going to be cautious of is not overworking him. So having a guy like Lankinen who can take on a heavy workload will be huge for the Canucks going down the stretch here. And of course, JT Miller has also been skating with the team as well. He was a participant in practice today, which was great to see. He should be returning here soon as well. The Maple Leafs are getting Max Domi back tonight. He's been out for some time. The subsequent move to make room on the roster was Grebenkin has been sent back to the American Hockey League. Of course, for Max Domi, I think we'll see a motivated player trying to get his first goal of the season. He was yet to score and hit the score sheet on the goal column before his injury forced him out of the lineup for that extended stretch. And in San Jose, Barclay Goodrow was back. He's been activated, but unfortunately, youngster Will Smith is out, and he's now been placed on injured reserve. And the Los Angeles Kings have sent youngster Arthur Kaliev to the American Hockey League on a conditioning stint. He's been out injured for the entire season here so far. Kaliev is a player that many people expected to be moved and get a fresh start, and has not yet happened. I know during the offseason there was lots of talk that he was one of several young players who, just wasn't fitting with the organization. Kind of, lost the confidence of former head coach Todd McClellan. Jim Hiller took over. Things didn't really get better for him. Looking at their lineup now, it's hard to kind of visualize a spot for him. So I don't know what will happen, or if they'll find a spot for him to play a few games to see if they can kind of showcase him for trade. I don't know what will happen, but Kaliev, I would suspect, probably doesn't have a long future in LA, but it definitely will be an interesting player to watch here moving forward. Now, as I mentioned, lots of news today from the NHL Board of Governors meetings, day 2 today from Palm Beach, Florida. All kinds of information coming out. For one, news on potential optimistic viewpoints from both the NHL and the NHLPA that they think they can get a new CBA extension done well ahead of the expiry. So, of course, the current CBA does not expire until September 2026. So this coming calendar year, 2025, which was not too far away here now that we're into December, they expect to get formal negotiations underway, possibly January, but it sounds like February is more likely. And they're optimistic that by the time we reach the Stanley Cup final in the summer, that they may have an agreement. At least they're hoping they will. Even if they don't have it by then and they reach it sometime over the summer, that's still a full year ahead, which is phenomenal. Obviously, if they need extra time, they can take it. There's no hard deadlines. But obviously, both sides are very optimistic. They both say that the labor piece is as great as it's ever been. Which is good to see for sure. And they certainly have lots to hammer out, but obviously the fact that they're both so optimistic makes us quite happy to know that there could be no chance of a work stoppage. At least that's the way things look right now. On expansion, there was a group from Atlanta at the meetings as well, trying to lobby, if you will, for an opportunity. They weren't anything official on the schedule or timeline for them to be, presenting or talking to the league or anything in any kind of official status or, circumstances, but obviously something that they were there to kind of lobby to make sure that lots of people knew that they were, very serious and ready to go. So I do suspect Atlanta is going to be one of those markets that gets lots of attention when the time does come. When it comes as well to the salary cap, there could be lots of news there that could be very positive, but it's not confirmed yet. We could see a 5% increase, which would take it to $92.5 million for next year. However, there is a possibility that it could be more than that. Quite often at the prior Board of Governors meetings in these numbers, usually when we do get the hard number for the following season, but that's not going to be the case this time around, where they're still negotiating to do with the NHLPA. Essentially, at this point, they have this year and then, of course, one more year on the CBA that's expiring, like I said, in 2026. So the rule that they put in place, that memorandum of understanding that was come together when they returned during COVID, was that it would be a 5% increase per season. So, of course, the problem with that, though, is that the revenues have been far exceeding what you would normally get on a 5% increase. It would work out to be more in most cases, but they've been kind of, reluctant to go much above that. So at this point, revenues are super high this year. They're exceeding expectations, and they're expected to for the next few years. So there's a possibility if the NHL doesn't do anything and they only stick with this 5% increase, say this year and next year, by the time that new CBA kicks in, there's a good chance that the cap could skyrocket at that point, because they are probably going to have that 5% increase won't be anything that's kind of written in stone anymore. It'll be more based strictly on revenues and where things are heading, and it could be a substantial increase. So rather than have a couple of modest years and then a skyrocket, they're kind of negotiating about possibly kind of phasing that in a little bit earlier and having a little bit more of mediocre jumps so that it's a little bit more steady. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, you're probably looking at a $4.5 million increase based on the percentage if it goes that way. But if it doesn't, we've heard rumors it could be as much as, 6, 7, 8 million. It's hard to say how much, but obviously the more money that goes into the system, the more money that's available for free agents, the more teams can spend, and the more it's better for everybody across the league as long as the revenues are there to support it. So obviously that's very positive. So we'll have to see where things go on that front. Like I said, they talked about expansion. They did talk as well about a playoff salary cap, which some GMs were very much in favor of, to try to get rid of this LTIR pool, during the regular season and then bring everybody back in the playoffs. It's to some degree it's a loophole, but obviously you have to have a legit injury to be able to exploit it. At this rate, though, it doesn't sound like there's enough support to really move forward on that. There are some teams that want it, but maybe not quite enough here at this point. But again, as they negotiate the next CBA, maybe, depending on what happens this year, maybe there'll be an increased appetite for that. It's kind of, somewhat difficult to say. There's also some talk as well about maybe trying to see if they can start the schedule a little bit earlier and not have the Stanley Cup awarded so late into June, but that's going to be challenging to do. You get TV networks involved. Of Of course, competition from other sports that they have to factor in as well from a ratings perspective. So as much as there is some appetite for that, again, it's going to be very, very challenging to do and may not really get too far. There's also talk as well about the Florida Panthers maybe hosting an outdoor game. Yes, you heard that right. Maybe an outdoor game in the state of Florida. It sounds like it would be held at the Marlins ballpark, and it could be something we see in the next 1 or 2 years. So we're curious to see how that would go and who their opponent would be. I mean, it makes sense, maybe the Lightning being a state rival, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. They could very easily bring in one of their other Atlantic Division rivals here as well. But that's an interesting thought. Now, as I mentioned, is the New York Rangers head coach Peter Laviolette, is he on the hot seat? Should he be concerned for his job security? It's kind of difficult to say right now. Obviously, the Rangers already made a significant trade, trading captain Jacob Trouba. They've had a couple of games since he's been gone. And, well, things haven't gone well. Things have not improved. I mean, it's only a short spell. So it's, kind of maybe a little bit early to judge this. But I know I was listening to Johnny Lazarus, Jeff Merrick on the Morning Cup of Coffee show on Daily Faceoff this morning, talking about is Laviolette on the hot seat, and they kind of seem to think that it's possible. I mean, Merrick made the comment of saying, Gerard Gallant's probably sitting back going, see, I told you the problem wasn't coaching. Obviously we know with Laviolette too, he does tend to have a really, because he's coached a lot, and the trend with Laviolette for whatever reason seems to be really good first year. You get the new coach bump in big fashion, and then every year after that, it's kind of slowly tapers, and it just seems like he wears on them. And after 3 to 4 years at most, he's out. I mean, it's not completely unusual. You could probably follow other coaches and see similar type trends, but that just seems to be the Lavi cycle. So, at this point, he's obviously not that far removed from his being new here. But, we know the Rangers are very impatient. Owner James Dolan is anything but patient. So curious to see what happens next. Are we going to see another trade? Is Chris Drury in any kind of trouble? This team is not thrilled with where it's at. Even when it was winning, they knew that there was issues there and things that couldn't be sustained, and that were probably, things that they needed to correct to have a better season. So it's hard to say what happens right now. Most GMs only get so many coaches that they can hire and fire before the owner kind of looks to them to get rid of them. He'd already be on his second coach already out the door. I don't know if he really wants to play that card, given that Drury hasn't really been on the job that long. Or, could it be something we see in the near future, a complete clean slate again? I don't know. I mean, this team has kind of had a different path here in the last few years, so I'll be curious to see what happens. But I have to think that at the very least, Laviolette's seat's getting warm for sure. I mean, to quote, I believe it was Kobe Bryant that said, you can't fire all the players, right? So unfortunately, the coach takes the brunt of it when things happen. Like, they've already made one big trade. It's not going to be easy to continue making big trades when you're talking about all these trade protection clauses that are in deals and the amount of money on some of these contracts. It's not easy at all. So, we'll have to see what happens here, but clearly a situation worth monitoring. When it comes to some trades around the NHL, I want to talk first about the Buffalo Sabres, another team that's on a major losing skid right now when they really can't afford to be. Clearly, you think something's going to change there. Lots of talk again about Kevin Adams. Is he on the hot seat? He's been there for quite a while. Obviously you had more than one coach already as well, so you start looking at the GM. We know there's lots of talk and rumors that he's tried to make deals, not overly successful. Obviously, this past offseason, they've made some moves, but, considering where things are at, not enough. I mean, they were rumored to be trying to trade for Marty Necas. It never happened. I think Carolina's quite happy to hang on to him at this point, but, clearly, a situation where something has to give there sooner than later. I know Elliot Friedman was talking on his latest podcast about how the fans have been really giving it to Dylan Cousins and wondering about his future. And unfortunately, the Sabres need to be careful here. No matter what they do, they've seen a lot of really talented players go out the door and have great success elsewhere, including winning a Stanley Cup. We've seen it with Ryan O'Reilly. We've seen it as well, with others like Sam Reinhart, Jack Eichel, and those are 3 different trades that went to 3 different teams, and they all won cups. Like, how does that feel? Like, that's terrible, right? So at some point, you got to be concerned it can happen again. So, yes, Dylan Cousins is a good player. He's still young. You're thinking yourself as a GM, I got to shake things up. He's a player that would have lots of interest from other clubs because of the fact that he's young, and they can probably feel like they can rejuvenate him. But if they make that mistake again and move a player that turns out to be a piece for another team to have a ton of success and possibly even a Stanley Cup, you have to think that that would be absolutely horrible. So the Sabres are struggling. We're possibly heading on year 14 or 15 to have no playoffs. And you're going to wonder what comes next there, what gives for this team. It's a shame, but it's not trending in a good direction after not winning a game in the past 7. They do have a few overtime losses in there, but no wins in 7 games. It's been a rough stretch for sure. Nonetheless, here now, as I mentioned, in Vancouver and Montreal, could we see a trade between these 2 clubs? We know the Canucks, there's no secret, they're looking for help on the blue line. And we know Montreal, to some degree, is too, but looking for different types of defensemen. Obviously, we know Montreal's looking for a right shot D. They're expected to trade David Savard sometime before the trade deadline and to bring in a right shot defenseman now and somebody who can probably take on more minutes later in the year when Savard eventually does go would be part of their plan. And of course, right now with the injuries and like Philip Hronek out, they probably wouldn't mind, accelerating things in Vancouver on a defenseman trade as well. Now, we've heard in Vancouver's case more of a left D, but I kind of wonder if they might be open to a right D too. So either way, Montreal and Vancouver both looking for help on the blue line, just completely different capacities. And I think they also have different kind of timelines here, where Montreal kind of has accepted the fact, I think, that they're not going to probably be a playoff team and trying to get as much development as they can this year. But, Vancouver's in a different state. They're trying to win and, get back to the playoffs and have a deeper run than they did last year. So clearly, they need help, and they need help in the pretty immediate future, especially with the long-term injury to Philip Hronek. So, obviously Montreal has guys that are available. There's a lot of talk that Vancouver might be interested in Mike Matheson. So that's, we don't really know what Montreal's intentions are. Like their main 2 veteran D are Matheson and Savard. Both could be traded, but at the same time, you got to wonder, do they keep a veteran around? But at the same time, Matheson's value was at his peak last year. They didn't move him. And, I think maybe they might have regrets, but also know that the Vancouver Canucks are more than willing to move a young forward and like a player like Nils Höglander right now in a trade if they can pick up a defenseman that's quite helpful to make this team and blue line better. So, Höglander for Matheson is something that I've seen on social media, an idea that's being floated around. I don't know that we have really any rumors from either side of these franchises suggesting that there's any kind of talks. I don't think it's reached that stage yet. It's more than anything just fans kind of connecting the dots and reporters, because obviously both of these players have been kind of, in the rumor mill on their own accord of being available with their clubs for potential trades. Obviously, moving Matheson would just elevate the role even more for youngster like Lane Hudson. They have more, right shot defensemen coming up through the pipeline than they do on the left side. Obviously, they have Reinbacher, they have Mailloux coming. They do have some other left D as well, but I think if they're going to acquire somebody who can come in, I think it makes sense that Matheson could go. And they bring in a veteran who can either replace Matheson or Savard, or the minutes they play, they're not probably going to get the same kind of veteran guy. It's kind of hard to say. They may not bother replacing him at all because they do have lots of youth on that blue line. Obviously, like I said, with Vancouver, the preferred piece going the other way at this point probably would be Nils Höglander, who we've heard from other sources has been available for a trade for Vancouver to help improve that blue line. So be interesting to see where these teams go. They may or may not end up dealing with each other, but they're both kind of looking for blue line help. I think Montreal is open to accumulating another young forward like Höglander as well. We know they've got lots in the organization that are going to have different roles, different spots, so they might be able to grab in their lineup, and they're not afraid of competition. Some of these guys they've acquired lately have been working out quite well. So we'll see here what happens. Obviously, they're not the only team looking for help on the blue line. Montreal, Vancouver, both, and then you got lots of other teams as well. It's going to be a tough market, so it's difficult to say if they can come to an agreement this early, but wouldn't be surprised to see, some more confirmed interest for Mike Matheson from the Vancouver Canucks, and if so, do the Habs like Hoglander? Because that might be what their offer is going to start with. Let me know what your thoughts on all of today's news or rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.